Hello guys, and welcome this new video with TheChessWorld.com. So we are here with the Sinquefield Cup round 6 today. We are going to watch the recap. The games were exciting live and they are going to be exciting on this recap as well. So we have two games featured today. Wesley against Hikaru Nakamura and Alexander Grischuk against Fabiano Caruana. So we have the three American players featured today, and we are starting the game with the game between the two Americans, Wesley and Hikaru. So Wesley played d4 already on the board on your screen. Knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7, e4, and d6. So we have here the King's Indian, the kid as they call it. I guess that you guys are really excited because that's an opening that produces a lot of spectacular games. Here I remember that we had a feature video where Maxime decided to play Maxime Vachilagrav played pawn to f3, the same is variation, but here Wesley decided to go knight f3, short castle, and bishop e2. So that's a very old. I mean, it goes to the very old lines that were popular in the 70s, 80s, 90s. So it was called like the main lines. Then the same ish become popular, and some line with h3 as well became more popular. But it's good to see that again coming. So pawn to e5, fighting for the center. If here you think that it's a free pawn, like you think I take the queen, so it's called the exchange variation of the King's Indian, but here you cannot seize the e5 pawn because of the move knight takes e4, threatening your knight, and this is bad. So here player in this exchange variation would go bishop g5, and the game continues. But Wesley is not trading the queens, he's castling, so this is the big move. Black goes knight c6, adding up pressure on the pawn d4, pawn to d5, and knight e7. So here we are going to talk a bit, make our first stop to talk a bit about the plans. So we will start on this move with the white plans, and that I will draw arrows, and then we'll go with the black plan on the next move. So white has the pawn structure here in the center is blocked, is fixed. And white already pushed the pawn on c4, and the play for white naturally goes here through to the queen side, trying to push c5 in order to weaken the d6 pawn, and then bringing the bishop to e3, the rook to c1, and allowing knight b5 then to try to enter on the c file. So this c file is really important. White is going to try to enter then from there, and also with the bishop on e3 and the knight on b5 that attack the a7 pawn, and white is trying to take advantage of the dark squares on the queen side, as the dark square bishop is pretty far away from defending this queen side. Also, just to say here, you have also the move b2 to b4 available with the bayonet variation, with the idea to go with the pawn to c5 and the bishop to h3 to attack the pawn d6 with this bishop on an awkward position, but looking straight to the pawn a bit later in the game. The Wesley decided to start with knight e1. The idea is to first of all be able to push f3. We'll talk about that a bit later when we'll start to talk about the black plan, and to bring the knight to d3 in order to push the pawn to c5. So that's the start of the plan. Then the bishop to e3, the rook on c1, and so on and so on. From the black part of the board, you see that if white wants to go on the queen side, then we want to go on the king side, isn't it? And so we are playing knight d7, and we are preparing for pawn to f5. White is never going to take because they don't want to give us the center. So this is not happening. Yeah, he will protect the pawn. Then we go pawn to f4, pawn to g5, knight g6, knight f6, pawn h5, pawn g4, and bring everybody to the party. The queen might come, the bishop might come to h6, or sometimes it goes to f8. The rook is coming as well to f7. The queen might land somewhere. So we are bringing everybody to this party, and this bishop is really important in those positions. The c8 bishop is extremely important because in a lot of lines it's sacrificing itself against the pawn on h3, or it lands on g4 with sacrifice. And people used to say that if you lose this light square bishop, there are no more checkmates. Of course, it's an exaggeration of the strength of the bishop, but this is a very important piece, even if often it never moves. It stays just on c8, and it's really important just to make the final blow. So we have the plan of both players. They are playing pretty quickly here. So f3, f5, bishop e3, f4, and bishop f2. So it's a classical maneuver. It's like you bring your bishop to e3, you play the move f3, and you hide it on f2. So the bishop is well placed, looking is a defensive and an attacking piece. Pawn to g5, so proceeding with the plan. Knight d3, knight g6, c5, and knight f6. So both players are playing on their side of the board. Black has bring its two knights to the party and has pushed the pawn. So the knights are behind the pawn. Same story for white. So it's continuation. Rook c1, rook f8. Rook f8 is an important move because it allows sometimes the bishop to go to f8 to protect the pawn. Or sometimes the rook now can come also on the 7 rank to help on the g or h file. Also the queen sometimes might come through f8 and g7. So rook f7, a good move, and it defends as well the c7 spot, which we said is important. King h1. Well, it's a move. I don't really like to lose tempo in order to hide the king when I have a kind of a Grand Prix, like having to be the first to hit my opponent. I don't like to play king h1, but I mean it's a theoretical move, and I mean there are reasons why it's not a bad move, though it's not my favorite way to play. Here Nakamura is going to play a novelty h5. I mean it's logical. It's just preparing the attack. The most games were followed by bishop f8, pawn to a4, pawn to h5, pawn takes. So I'm showing you other games here. Just to make you understand one thing here. Sorry, I just following the path of the game. I just want to show you that people usually bring this pawn to a4 in most of the game. It's very important later on in what we will see, so that's why I showed how it continues. And here white is trying to take advantage of these dark squares, and black is of course attacking. But let's come back to the game. Just remember this pawn on a4. So king h1, pawn to h5. So I mean it doesn't change a lot, but what's good with this pawn on h5 is that now we can bring the bishop on h6, and maybe this bishop from h6 will become a strong piece later on in the game. So pawn takes d6, pawn takes d6, and knight to b5. And remember this pawn on a4 now. So we are threatening here with white the a7 pawn 2 times with the bishop and the knight. So if we take the a7 pawn, we are hitting the bishop, and everybody comes to the party later on. As we said, we don't want to lose the bishop. We can afford it losing it against the rook because we win an exchange, and the rook is also really important. But we can't afford losing this bishop against the knight. So after a move like g4, white could continue queen c2. So taking, he wants to take now his knight to c7, attacking the rook, and maybe you go then to e6. Pawn to g3. So black has to be quick. Knight c7, rook c7, queen c7. Queen c7, rook c7, pawn takes f2, So black is 2 pieces for the rook. But the thing here is that white can play rook fc1, so he's not winning back the pawn immediately, he keeps it. The bishop has to leave, and after rook b7, white has a great advantage because it's winning a second pawn, and black has all problem in the world stopping those pawns because there are no more attack on the king side, and the pieces, all the play will be on the queen side, and black is placed to play on the king side. So it's here a great advantage for white. So here, instead of taking the bishop, you play knight e8, because if white goes rook c2 or rook c3, then it's really unclear, because you have no time to penetrate the queen side, and black has time to organize itself. So this is okay for black. But after knight e8, white goes rook takes g7, knight takes g7, pawn h3, pawn g3, pawn g3, bishop g3, and white is a pawn up and is going to attack badly this pawn structure. No black bishop, no dark square bishop anymore. The file is available and it's a pawn up, so white is doing good. So after knight b5, you cannot go with this g4 move, and black decides to go a6. So it's logical. White goes knight to a3, so going away. And now look at the difference between this pawn on a4 or not, is that black is going b5 now. So they tell you that you don't have to weaken to move the pawns on the side where you are being attacked. But here it's a bit different. The dynamic of the game is different. That's the King's Indian. So the first one, I mean, even if white is winning all those guys here, even the queen, let's say, if I give a checkmate, it's game over. And this move b5 is really slowing down white, because the knight is now away from the game, and it's hard to move this knight on a good square. From another point of view, if you want to break this pawn structure, you need to play a4. So it means you have to play a move with the knight on a bad square, and then maybe even protect the pawn to play a4. So it's not playable. So white is going rook c6, which is logical, and he's trying to attack the d pawn now, and maybe bring the knight later on c2, b4, and kind of attack maybe the pawn structure. But it seems to me here, with the dynamic we have now, that black is having a more clear way to attack his opponent, and I already like black more. I would like also to tell you that the computer is always evaluating white to be better here, because it doesn't understand well the strength of the attack for black. It doesn't feel those things quickly. And Nakamura, after the game, in the talks they had with Maurice Ashley for live coverage, he said that the computer is always giving +1, +2, and Wesley probably thought that white is better, and he said his preparation was just bad, because he trusts those +1.5 on its stockfish, or Houdini, or whoever. But he said, in fact, it's more close to being equal, and if you don't analyze those positions deeply, just trusting the computer, then you find yourself in trouble. So rook c6, black goes g4 now, keeping the attack on. Queen c2, so okay, bringing the piece to the c file. Queen f8, bringing the queen into the party. Rook to c1, so now white seized the c file, and bishop d7, so we are saving the bishop. What just happened is that white bring the pieces to the c file, and black is continuing to push the pawns and getting closer and closer to the white king. Here, the thing is that white has to bring pressure on the d6 pawn, as black decided to save the bishop f8 move and bring it to h6. The d6 pawn might be the weak spot here for white, and the move like knight b4 was interesting, attacking the a6 pawn with this, which is the other weak spot. So we have two weak spots, giving up the exchange. And so after bishop takes c6, pawn takes c6 with the d pawn, and now it's hard for. I mean, it's unclear. I don't want to say white is better at all, but I mean, white is maybe playing rook d1, knight d5 coming, and this pawn on c6 is really strong. Also, c7 is a threat. This pawn on a6 is watched by the knight. We could see some c7, bishop b6 coming also. So it's really unclear. White is still having good chances on the queen side, still attacking. Black is still attacking on the king side, but I said this bishop was really important on d7. So often the attack is slowed down by the loss of this bishop. So this was an interesting way to play with knight b4. Not sure Hikaru would have taken the rook. He could have just played bishop h6, rook takes a6. There was some interesting line like that. Knight to e4. So now if you take with the queen, it's met by bishop f5. And look at that, your queen is trapped on the e4 square, the center of the board. So you can't retake, you have to take with the pawn, and rook takes a6, knight takes a6. So now white is a piece up, but the pawn is coming to f3. So that were some lines that might have occurred in the game. So you see, black was really not forced to take this exchange, but just play bishop h6 and keep the attack on. White goes rook c7, and all the players in the conference room with Morris said that they think it's a big mistake. And the reason is simple: is that it's really hard now to see what you are doing with white on this queen side. I mean, the rook on c7, it attacks nothing but the bishop, which is too well defended. No entry square for this queen. If you go knight b4 now, you are not threatening anything. So knight b4 not threatening anything. Then knight c6 not threatening anything at all as well. Maybe you want to play rook a7 and trade a rook. But okay, I mean, it's too slow. I mean, you never have time to do that. So black continues with bishop h6. So he's preparing for some craziness, maybe h4, h3, maybe pawn to g3, maybe pawn takes and knight g4. Sometimes he has the idea with knight takes e4 as well. So he's preparing for all those things. White goes bishop e1 because he doesn't want to lose the tempo after g3, and also maybe he wants to recycle the bishop somewhere now, attacking the pawn, but still it's really unclear what Wesley is doing. Pawn to h4 now. So black is preparing for pawn h3 or pawn g3, h3, and bishop takes sometime happen, and knight g7, knight hg5. Also things that happen often in the King's Indian, but I think here he prepares for h3. And white takes the pawn. It's unclear what white could have done. It's not a good move, but I mean, even if you go some knight b1, black could continue the game with g3, h3, knight takes e4, and some kind of move like that were really strong. So I'm not sure if, I mean, white took, but I'm not sure if knight b1 or any other move to try attacking on the queen side was better, because as I said already 10 times, it's unclear how you do anything. So he took the pawn. Now Hikaru pushes the pawn, so he attacks the rook. White take the pawn, and I think here Hikaru thought that Wesley thought maybe he just wanted to give up 2 pawns to take the exchange, and he missed the blow knight takes e4. So black just gave up 2 pawns and he's giving up a piece. But the thing is that if you take this piece, black goes rook f1, king g2. So if bishop f1, it's a checkmate. And if king f2, let me have a look, just I'm so sure there. And so if king f2, we can go as in the game bishop e3, and you will see it's extremely strong. Just I want to go in some very long variation because we'll see all those patterns in the game that is coming. So let's just stick with the game and not watch this variation. The best move here for white. So he played rook d1, which is I mean the game is already over for the engine when it's working for a bit. But the best try to save the day was rook d7, and black, if you take back, white is taking the knight and is doing okay. So black has to keep going with rook takes f3. So he gave up the bishop, and now after bishop f3, queen f3, queen g2, queen d3. So this was all the playing line, so it's pretty much forced. So queen f3, queen g2 is forced. Queen takes d3. So now we have an exchange down and we attack the rook, and white has a beautiful move, rook d1. So now if black takes the rook and queen takes e4, white is better even because he has the good bishop against the bad bishop. This rook is really strong on the 7th rank, and now the queen is inside and controlling the light squares. So white here is doing extremely good. But the thing is that black has a fantastic move here. It's bishop d2, threatening knight f4, and keeping this queen, protecting everything. So white goes bishop d2 and knight f4, and white is getting checkmated here somehow. You cannot save yourself. If you play, let's say, queen to f1, it's met by knight f2, queen f2, queen e4, check, king g1, knight h3, knight takes f2, and the rook is coming next on f8 to checkmate you. So just an example how the game could end. But your opponent needs to see bishop d2 in order to win it. If he missed that, it's okay for white. I think Hikaru would have found it, but still, you're putting your opponent under the gun. He has to find the move. With move rook d1 that was played in the game, it's pretty easy now for Hikaru. So he goes rook takes f3. So it's the same variation as rook takes d7. The only difference is that the bishop is still on d7. If you go here bishop f3, queen f3, queen g2, so following the path of the same game, of the same variation, black can go bishop takes g4 now. So the bishop is still alive, and rook a1, queen f5, and bishop f3 is coming. Just showing you another beautiful variation, king g1, bishop is f3, queen f1, the only move to save the queen, bishop f3, and queen to g4. So it's again, it's game over. Okay, so white goes rook takes d7 now. So basically he's just like after rook d7, rook f3 would have played rook d1. Black goes rook f1 check, king g2 is forced, and here Hikaru plays bishop e3, an excellent move. He said in the press conference that he thinks that Wesley didn't see this move at all, bishop e3. But what Hikaru missed, and he was pretty upset, it was funny to miss that when they showed it to him, is pawn to h3, king takes h3, rook takes f2, bishop takes f2, and you have 15 seconds to find how to finish the game. Well, it's not a checkmate, but you have 15 seconds to find the right way to retake this bishop on f2. How to retake it. How to do that. 15 seconds. I found you guys. I hope you guys found it. You can play here queen takes f2, and after knight takes f2, knight f4 check, king h4, and bishop g5 checkmate. This is just a marvelous checkmate, giving up the queen to checkmate the king on the edge of the board. The thing is that if white doesn't do that, the threats or knight to g5 checkmate. Yeah, just simply. Just so many threats, even if you watch that. So we threat to knight g5, and it's pretty much impossible to stop it another way. So this was a beautiful move, rook f2, allowing to make this checkmate. But Hikaru played bishop e3. I would never recommend to player, by the way, if you have a move like bishop e3 that is totally winning and you can feel that, to go with the beautiful h3 rook f2 and sack the queen. Because imagine you miscalculate something, it's game over, your opponent won. And if you go bishop e3, there are really low risks. So here white is going bishop to g3. If you go if you go pawn to h3, it's made by knight f4 check, king h2, and knight takes d3 with the queen coming to the party now. So bishop g3, trying to save the day. Black simply goes pawn takes, so taking the pawn away. Rook takes f1. Now white is a rook up, but knight h4 check, king h3 is forced. If you go king h1, g2 is a checkmate, so king h3 is forced, and black goes queen to h6 now, bringing the last piece to the party. I mean, the last piece would be the rook, but I mean, from the pieces on the king side, the queen is arriving now. This is hopeless, but so we are threatening knight g5 checkmate. So the only way for Wesley to stop that is to play g5. Knight takes g5, king g4. So the king is driving on the light squares, leaving its life on live squares. Knight hf3 now, threatening queen h3 checkmate. White goes knight f2, covering. For how long will he be able to cover? Queen h4 check now, king f5 is forced. Rook f8 check now, bringing the last rook to the party. King g6. Rook f6 check, forcing the king to come to the dark square. Knight e4 check, king g6, and queen to g5 checkmate. So even the king, somehow the black king participated to this craziness. I mean, it's really rare where all the pieces participated in this attack. Even the black king did the job to checkmate this guy. So very amazing game by Hikaru Nakamura. It should have a special prize for this one, because this is just amazing, guys. This is one of the most amazing games I saw this year. So would love to see a game between Hikaru Nakamura and Denis Hrismatulin to see some very crazy fireworks. Reminds me a bit of the game between Zvidler and Hrismatulin, if some of you saw that. So let's jump to the next game, and we're already 30 minutes to the video, but the second game will be a bit quicker because I don't want to keep you forever. But this game was so amazing, we had to take time to watch that. So Grischuk against Caruana, d4 knight f6, c4 e6, knight f3, d5. So going to a queen's gambit, transposing knight c3, bishop e7, bishop f4, castle e3, knight b d7. All that is theoretical, that's why I'm quick. Just there are a lot of moves that can be played, can't be played. I mean, let's go to the moment when we have plans. And here pawn to c5. So it's the same variation as Aronian played successfully against Caruana in the first round of the Sinquefield Cup. I covered this game. If you want to watch, you can find my recap on the first round. The thing is that, well, I will quickly say the plans again. The plan for black is either to go e5, but it's hard to do technically, either to break up this pawn structure by playing, well, often you have to play c6 and then b6, a5 to break up the pawn chain on the queen side. For another, and for white, the plan is to keep those strong pawns and kind of destroy the black side on the queen side. I mean black on the queen side. So it's a very concrete things that have to be done. It's concrete plans, and the success of your plan depends on the success of your opponent to counter it. So both players are having a hard job on the queen side, and the black is going knight to e4. So it's theoretical move, and here Grischuk plays the move a3. So usually the move is rook c1, and he goes a3, and he explained in the conference room that he prepared for about 10 hours for this game. Listen to that, 10 hours from yesterday and today, and that he almost didn't wake up for the game. So he spent 10 hours just to play a chess game. Just to be prepared to play a chess game, and he said it's a very deep move because in a lot of line the rook is on c1, but here with the rook on a1 and the pawn on a3, it changes a lot of things in those lines. So it's things that we guys can't understand because it's a 2700 level. I mean, even player with 2600s don't prepare such a deep things. It's really crazy level, but it's really hard to get the insights of those things because nobody's never going to explain to you, and either you spend some 100 hours to understand that, either it's pretty much impossible. I mean, the difference between the pawn on a3 and the rook on c1 and like that. I mean, it's just crazy why the pawn is better on a3 than the rook on c1. Queen a4. So white is stopping black from playing b6 by threatening the c6 pawn. And black here is expanding the king side again. So he's going g5, which is a move Caruana really loves, bishop g3 and f5. So in this concrete position, which is different if you watch the first game where it was, I think it was nonsense to play like that because he played like that in a more open position. Here the position is pretty closed. It's hard for white here to attack on the king side because all its play for the moment is on the queen side, and so pushing the pawn, extending the king side, even if it makes a weak king, is okay here because it's hard for white really to bring pieces there. So this is okay here to make that. Though it's always double-edged because it can turn against you. Your weapon can turn against you. So pawn to f4, bishop to h2. So expanding the king side as maximum. Pawn to e5. So now you never want to take because you are losing the pawn on c5. Bishop to e2. Pawn to e4. So now black is closing the center, and this is good because now it looks a bit like a King's Indian. The center is totally closed because this pawn was pushed, and it's a good thing. Knight d2, and now black is playing a very interesting sacrifice. He could just have continued the game normally. Maybe even taking here was possible, or moving the knight away. But he decided to go with an amazing move. It's knight takes c5, destroying the white pawn structure, and he wants to use all those pawns to have a very strong initiative. So white takes back, bishop takes f5, c5, and short castle. So we can say that the deepness of the preparation of Grischuk, as he sold it to us with Maurice Ashley, when he talked with Maurice Ashley, didn't really work out because here the opening, the play by black was amazing, and it's just here that Fabiano is going to produce a mistake. But from the start till here, we could say that Fabiano dominated the opening. Here he's going to play pawn to b5, and he should have kept it simple, playing pawn takes c3. There was some, so he's pretty much forcing white to give up the piece back. Pawn takes, by example, queen b3 check, king g7, bishop e5, king h6, and king h6, pawn takes e3. So it is pretty much forced after pawn e3. And here it's a very unclear position that could have arose. The king on h6 somehow is on a good square because it's hard to find a way to attack it. From this diagonal it's hard, for this diagonal it's hard, and from this fight it's pretty hard as well. Computer recommends queen d5 here, forcing the queen exchange, and I mean, well, it's just a chess game, but that's how black should have continued. It's probably close to equal somehow, because black is opponent, but white has some activity, so it's a compensation. So it was close to equal. It's unbalanced, and I mean it's a very obvious move, pawn to e3, but it starts with b5, and now white just goes queen b3. So he just hit the queen, but the queen is improving its position now because it attacks. It's on the diagonal it wanted to go at. So I mean, sometimes you think you win a tempo, but in fact it's no win, because your opponent is playing a move he wanted to play anyway. So queen e7 now, it's protecting the pawn because knight e4 was a threat, and king to h1. So now the king is away from all those troubles in the diagonal, and the king is safe. He still has some black still has some compensation here, but the initiative is not hitting his opponent anymore. He doesn't have, he can't punch him now. So bishop e6. So bringing the bishop on the diagonal, I mean, it's logical. You bring your pieces on good squares, and here Grischuk is playing a really good move. He plays a4, and the thing is that he provokes pawn to d4. He provokes pawn to d4, queen d1, so it's attacked. Pawn to d3 now. So you don't want to take here because he takes on e4. So pawn to d3. So black think that somehow he pushes, and he's bringing his pawn even closer to the end zone. But Grischuk say, no problem, push your pawn, I'm waiting for you. So bishop g4, wants to trade pieces, of course. Bishop d5. So somehow, visually, black is maybe bringing his pieces, advancing. But the thing is that take, knight b3, and now the knight comes to d4, and somehow those pawns were pushed, but they don't control the center anymore. Remember, when you push a pawn, you give up squares close to on your side. And the thing is that black now, with all those pushed pawns, black is having trouble defending its center. The pawns are too far away, and it's not clear what they are doing in fact. So if you go bishop d6, bishop b6, knight d4, and the knight is just a monster, no more pawns to kick him away. So white has a good advantage. He goes pawn to e3, knight c5, queen c5, and pawn takes e3. So somehow black is able to seize another pawn, but we see now, so this is the game, that the position opened up, and when the position opens up, you have to pay for the move g5 and f5 around your king. So as in the game against Aronian, Caruana was able to push his pawn, to put pressure on his opponent. The opponent just sit back, just defends himself, and now he's going to counter-attack. So the very good idea here is to go bishop g1, bishop d4. He starts with rook e1, queen f2, bishop g1, queen f7, queen to d2. So attacking the g5 pawn now. Queen g6, and here you have 10 seconds to find a very beautiful move for white from now. And the move is, I hope you hit the stop button if you still want to search. The move is rook to a6. And the thing is that now after queen a6, queen g5, queen g6, queen takes d5 check. And black is having big trouble to defend himself with the bishop coming to him. So white just want to pawn back. Even the second and third pawn are falling, so it's material advantage for white, and a very closed, a very open a king in front of those two bishops. So black can't take the rook. He goes rook f6, a decent defense, and here white missed a beautiful way to play. His rook takes f6, queen f6, and rook takes e4. Well, they were inside not, so it's probably impossible to find. And the thing is that after bishop takes e4, white can go the move queen to a2 check, attacking the king, king f8, bishop to c5 check, king e8, and queen to g8 checkmate. Well, I mean queen f8 and queen takes. And after queen a2, if you decide to go to another square, you just lose your queen. So he missed this amazing blow, but I mean, how can you see that? It's not really clear. So white goes here, rook ea1, a very good move, especially because it was short on time. So I mean, just adding a pressure on the a file. Rook e8, rook takes f6, queen f6, rook takes a7 now. So now he left the pawn, so the rook is on the 7th file. Remember, when the 7th file is wide open like that, a rook is always making trouble because it can connect with the queen or the bishop on g7 square, and it's always a big trouble. Pawn to h6, trying to consolidate, but again, when you don't have pawns in front of your king anymore, it's pretty hard. Bishop e3, well, it's a calm move, not a long time left on the clock. Well, Caruana had less than a minute. Grischuk had a bit more than 2 minutes. So somehow Grischuk was, I mean, Caruana took a look of the Grischuk medicine, because he tested the medicine to be in deep Zeitnot with few seconds on the clock. Usually it's Alexander in those problems. Was not the case today. So queen e5. Black cannot do anything here. I mean, everything is too open around the king. But Grischuk didn't want to take risks, so he goes queen e1, bishop c4. The thing is that, yeah, bishop d4 was the most obvious move, but I think he didn't want to go into those tactics. With pawn comes to e2. Maybe he didn't see the simple queen g6 here, and after king f8, bishop c5, rook e7, and white is absolutely winning here. You can take on e7 with the bishop, and queen takes, and rook takes, and he has no time to make another queen. But I think with few seconds on the clock, he didn't want to risk it. So queen e1, bishop c4, here bishop d4, queen f4, bishop e3 coming back. Just to play moves. Again, Caruana had very few seconds on the clock, and he was the one trying to go to the 40 move. But as white is totally winning, he wanted to get the extra time just to make sure he doesn't blunder. So queen e5, bishop d4, queen f4. White here goes rook g7 check, king f8 is forced. And here you have 10 seconds to find the last move of the game. And the last move of the game is queen to a1, bringing the queen now to a3, And here Fabiano did play b4, but he was flagged before, so he lost on time. But he was going to proceed b4. The thing is that it didn't change anything with the flag or not, because after pawn takes b4, now the diagonal is opened and bishop c5 is coming next. So white is, I mean, it's plus 10, I think, on the computer already. It's game over. So great win by Grischuk. And again, Caruana pushing its pawns. Maybe he's right, but I mean, the thing is that when you push pawns like that, the only mistake you do, your opponent is counter-attacking you. So I mean, it's a very responsible way to play, and it's not really excusing mistakes. So a great win by Alexander. Let's go to the result of the day. Sorry, we have to get them. Okay, so here they are. So Grischuk won, so fifth board. Grischuk won against Caruana. So he's back on 50% with 3 out of 6. Caruana is not the rock bottom because we have Wesley, but he's not enjoying a good tournament. After the 7 out of 7 last year on the first 7th round, he's finding himself with 2 out of 6 for the moment. So Hikaru Nakamura, 3.5 points now, beat Wesley. Giri Anand was a calm draw. Nothing happened, nothing special happened. So Anand with 2 points with Caruana, they are suffering. Vachier Grav with 3.5 now, just half a point from the leader. He had a great game in the Berlin against Topalov. He really beat Topalov in great fashion. So he has 3.5 points. And he's sharing the 3rd, 4th place with Anish Giri. And the two leaders, I mean, nobody wanted to attack. Aronian was pretty cautious, as Carlsen was, and the game between the leaders just ended with a draw. So they are leading with 4 points, but they have to take care because Vachier Grav and Anish Giri are just following half a point away. Last thing I want to say about the standing is that Topalov, after having a wonderful start, just lost back-to-back games and is now just sitting with 50%. Thank you for watching this video. Have a nice day. See you tomorrow. Bye.